be here, John. You mentioned AABR. I remember being at the first AABR in Las Vegas 10 years ago. So hopefully we see another 10 years and more 10-year anniversaries after that. I'm excited to be here. I just want to first invite my fellow panelists onto the panel, and then we'll do some introductions, and then we'll kind of go from there. So it should be an exciting next few minutes as we talk about past, present, future. So I'm going to invite Mai, clearly, that's coming on way, Kamesh, and also John. Please take your seats. We'll do some introductions. And yes, we did have a prep call earlier on the phone. So real quick, maybe some introductions first. I kind of said a little bit about myself. I just want to add, clearly very passionate about Asian American affairs. So passionate that I actually moved to Asia for EY for the last 4 years. Didn't know COVID was coming. I had the family pack up from New Jersey, and we moved, but the stuff was still in transit in the ocean, and then COVID hit, and so the stuff came back to New Jersey. So I can tell you firsthand, being passionate about Asian American affairs, making a career decision, leaving, getting there, and then being without your goods and household stuff for many, many months, right? So it was a fascinating experience. We were based in Singapore. Again, EY just afforded me these great opportunities. So spent the last 4 plus years in Asia. I'm now back with EY Global out of New York. The stuff has arrived back, so the stuff is going back and forth quite a bit. And I'm responsible for all of our tech partnerships in consulting, AI, digital, and super excited to be involved with AABDC. John, I was also an honoree earlier years, as many of you. So it's like a homecoming affair for me to be here today, 10 years later after the Vegas event. So with that, John, maybe I'll pass it on to you, quick introductions, and then we'll go around for the other.
John Lee, and I'm new to AABDC, as of last year, brand new. And it's a great organization from what I've seen. A bit about my background, I'm the CEO and president of MKS Instruments. We are in the semiconductor equipment industry, so kind of a $4 billion public company. Maybe a little bit about my background. I grew up I was born in Taiwan, but grew up in Pennsylvania, kind of flyover country. I ended up marrying another person who looks just like me and has the same background, Taiwanese American. But we have two brothers. They did not marry someone like that. My brother's married to African American. I have nephews, niece like that are different. My wife's brother married a redhead, so those kids are different. But the cousins all know each other really well, right? And it's just great to see that the diversity, and it's just the American dream, right? We kind of live it in our family. It's been very important to me as I lead the company for the benefit of shareholders and employees, but also really about inclusion of our employees. And I think that's one of the areas. I have my CHRO, General Counsel here, because inclusion has been such an empowering part of how we can be successful.
Okay, thanks, John. Kamesh, dear friend for many years, and good to have you back.
Hello, everyone. Kamesh Nagarajan. I'm at Morgan Stanley, and managing director in private wealth management. Manage a team that works for ultra high net worth. Got involved with AABDC. I think I was an honoree in 2010. I think I was 8 years old at the time. And thought the organization was great, but John was just an amazing bundle of energy. And they looked at the room and said, how can I help? Let's get more corporate sponsors. Let's get the word out. Really was the sitting at the AABDC and seeing the energy of the companies that were there that could go back and tell other people and bring it and make the conversation move away from just HR and diversity to business and to all these great companies need to be there. And that was one of my passions. Also, looking at the room in 2010, there weren't a lot of Indians in the room, Indian Americans, and we weren't always thought of as part of the Asian contingent, South Asian, right? So that was one of my goals, to say, how do we get the room to keep growing like that? And I'm really happy to see that it's grown tremendously. I was at the first AABR in Las Vegas, and continue to be honored to help the organization, help the community as we grow and we morph and these different issues come to light. But anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Kamesh. Mike, we'll start off with you, sir.
I'm a proud mother of a 16-year-old daughter, and every time I talk about her, I cry. But she was 7 years old when we had a...
Maybe you can just speak up a little bit.
Okay, we'll start over. Okay.
Perfect. Start over.
Let's get it. Rewind. Proud mother of a 16-year-old daughter, and I once had a childcare crisis where I had to take her into a board meeting, and she was 7 years old. And so the funny thing is, she said that night, she said, "Mom, why do you work with a bunch of men?" And so it's fascinating because they told us to sit in the arrangement of the slide so that you can see that my name is Mai Ton. I am kind of always the woman amidst the men, and it's been the story of my life. But I've worked in 10 different tech startups as the chief people officer, and I built the operating systems of some of these companies. But what is relevant to you is that I actually sat in very many rooms where your performance was being discussed. So I saw who got promoted, I saw who didn't get promoted, and I think that as I look around the room, a lot of you are mid-level, maybe senior level folks, and I can tell you what you did to get to this point isn't going to help you to get to the C-suite. So I'm here to kind of give back to the community, and I look forward to sharing my lessons that I had to learn the hard way so that I can help others.
Great, thank you. That last topic resonates with a lot of us, so we're gonna keep coming back to you. Mike. Thank you. So I think we've touched on a little bit on our backgrounds. Obviously, the panel is around 3 themes: past, present, and future. And it'd be great to get a little bit of a historical perspective. John, starting with you. And you said you've been fairly recently involved with AABDC and others, but just in terms of some lessons learned, career success, because the real question is, how has your involvement with AABR, for those of you that have been involved for the last 10 plus years, how has that helped, lessons learned from a career perspective, helped you accelerate your career? So John, depending on how you want to kind of, take the interpretation.
Yeah, as you said, AABR is new to me, but in general, the idea of networking, building your own network, is hugely important for anybody's career. And so you have to build that network. And whether you find it through an organization like AABDC or not, in the past, when I was coming up, there weren't a lot of organizations like that. So you had to kind of build it yourself. So I would say take advantage of it right now, and don't limit yourself. Right? Build those networks through official organizations or through your own friendship networks, right? But as Mai said, that is going to be even more critical as you try to move up in the corporate ladder. At some point, you're all talented. Everybody is very good at what they do. How do you decide who gets the promotion? It's going to be personal relationships. So we're all good at what we do. We all do 99.9% of the job perfectly well. So there are choices that the senior person is going to make, and a lot of that is going to be whether they know you or not. So take advantage of the social situations, right? I took up golf because everybody played golf in the company, and I was horrible at it, and still horrible, but it's better. Then you've got, the old story of, well, a lot of things get discussed in the social environment, and I think a lot of certainly East Asian folks, you're not brought up to do that. You're brought up to just work hard, and it will come. Someone will anoint you, will see that you're the most talented, and they'll promote you. I don't think that works in South Asia or East Asia anyway. And I think that's a huge hindrance, I think, for people who have grown up in a culture where it's kind of, don't say anything until you're addressed. Right? I think you have to sell yourself, and you have to put yourself out there.
Great, thanks. Appreciate that. Kamesh, maybe you want to add some perspectives?
I think John's dead on. I think one of the Asian community things is we kind of sit in our offices and don't go out. And I don't like the word network because it's a computer word for shaking someone's hand or making human connection. We call it networking, but it's never been my favorite word. But if you think about it, 30, 40 years ago, my dad came here in 62 on a boat, 22 days, I've heard this story forever, with $8 in his pocket. And one of the things is, as he was coming up the ladder at IBM, when somebody else, Indian, was looking for a promotion, he kind of looked the other way. It was like, let's all carve out our own. Let's not do this. And that was maybe the way it was back then. We now have the most powerful community, demographics and education and wealth, and we see it. You know, maybe we're Asian Americans on top of industries. So now it's a power that everyone wants to harness. So you have it. Now I think for everybody, there's many cultures. Those cultures are being embraced. Firms are representing them, and you can take advantage of all of that. So the things I think I've learned is let's try to sit down and not think our strengths or our weaknesses. What makes everyone individual is really the biggest strength. And I say this because John had 2 years ago Raj Subramaniam from FedEx as the Pinnacle awardee at the Outstanding 50. And what dawned on me is Fred Smith ran a company for 37 years, and he found it. And when he handed the keys to somebody else, there was an Asian American right there on top. And somebody who had probably, I think, had worked in the company for many, many years and become deranged. We can all do that. So don't make your strength your weakness.
Okay, Mai, maybe I'll twist it a little bit before I, same question, but we've all heard the adage, heads down, work hard. I think John mentioned this, and good things will come. And sometimes they do, but many times they don't. But we're still working hard, we're on the treadmill, and the good things never come, right? And you've been on the other side, you've been in those closed door meetings. You know, if you can touch on your perspective, sponsorship, the whole advantage of sponsorship, mentorship, etc. You can build on that.
So I haven't sat in many rooms like this. As in, I look around and everybody here is almost Asian American, and you have some Asian American speakers and panelists throughout the day. But John Wang, I met him in 2021 when I was also the recipient of the 50 Most Outstanding Asian Americans in Business. But he's connected me over the last 2 years. He's connected me with very many people that I wouldn't have ever connected with, and all I did was ask for help. And that's something that we're not trained to do in our Asian culture. You have to do it alone. You have to work hard. You have to put your head down. You can't speak unless you're spoken to. You have to respect your elders. But if you look at corporate America, that is not what they want. They want you to speak your mind, earn the seat at the table, and even if your thoughts are half-baked, they want to know them. And so we have to break the mold of what we've been taught as Asian Americans. And I get emotional about all this because I see the suffering. I see people who spend a lifetime working and they don't make it to the top. They're in every industry. I think there are many studies, probably Joyce knows about them all, but Asians make it to the middle of management, but they're having a very hard time breaking through to the senior leadership positions, especially the C-suite. And I see the burnout. I see the medication. Working in HR, I know that there's a lot of illness and burnout and kind of chemical dependencies now that people are having to turn to, and it just this is not sustainable. Not only for Asian Americans, but for the entire working force. We have to break the recipe because it's not working.
Right, thanks. So we're going to switch gears. We're going to go from the past to the present, which are, we live in interesting times. There's a lot of uncertainty all around us in the world, geopolitics, and then other dimensions. So maybe John, starting off with you, just in terms of how do we make sense of all that's going around us, but more importantly, how do we continue as Asian American leaders to find opportunity? And I strongly believe, there can be all kinds of storms around us, but there's always a silver lining, and how do we kind of pick from that? How do we turn some of these challenges into opportunity areas in current times?
Yeah, so just maybe a little background on that. I became CEO in January 2020. Everyone remember January 2020? It was the last good month before COVID, right? So you're the new CEO and you don't even know how to do that job yet, and then suddenly COVID. And I think we got through it because we had a very resilient team. And I think resiliency is the key to being able to take on the opportunities as they come up. So we never looked at being victims of, oh, COVID happened, just became CEO, what a bummer. It's like, okay, well, you got a job. How do we take advantage of it? Use that to, for instance, practice remote work. And that's part of our culture now. You know, remote work is part of our culture. Before that, we were, if I can't see you working, you're not working. Right? No one was allowed to work remotely. So things and opportunities came of that. I think also when things change, it does give you more opportunity for those people who want to take advantage of those opportunities, for those who have the resiliency to take advantage of those opportunities. So change is actually good. You have to take that attitude because it's not stopping. I think it's just going to continue accelerating. And it has. So it went from COVID, the supply chain constraints, to trade wars, to wars, literally. Wars.
Sorry, and egg shortages now. So
We got extra but those are really, I think every generation thinks that when they're in charge, it was just the worst, most changing. It's not true. Every generation has that because things are always changing. So whatever's happening now, you know that 3 years from now, something else will be very different. It just will be. So I think you want to embrace that change and look at it as an opportunity. But to do that, you have to be resilient. You have to be able to, there's a lot of skills to do that, but if you can do that, you will succeed. Because, as I said, when they look at what you do and what you say and how you respond to change and challenges, if you do better, they will pick you.
Thanks, John. Kamesh?
Sort of top John said or add to it. It's great. I think, you know, leadership and opportunities to grow only come with challenges and obstacles. You know, success is built on the back of failure. So you have to fail often. It's something very hard for a community to not be perfect, to not get the 100, right? But I think where there is struggle, where there is uncertainty, that's where opportunity comes, right? I work in wealth management, and when I started out, one thing they would always say is, you know, when the markets are going up, people don't need you. They don't need your advice. They need your help. You can get pets.com, remember that? I'm aging myself in the room by saying, but they need you when everything's going rosy, which was 97, 98, 99, and all of a sudden in March 2000, pretty much unbeknownst, the NASDAQ collapsed by 50%. 50% drop in the NASDAQ in March. And that continued on until 2022. That's where, you know, for me as a young advisor at the time, I was able to build a lot of clients who wanted advice. So not to make this a pitch for wealth, but to come back to us where there's challenges. So if we see adversity today, if we say that there's things that are going on for the Asian American community that are difficult, we turn that around, we create it into opportunity, no matter what the situation is. And I think that's the number one thing you take. You know, when you work out, no pain, no gain. That's where the fun comes from. Going out of your comfort zone.
Why?
Yeah, present tense is that I think that humans do best when they are able to adapt. And so I think that as the world changes around us and as expectations change around you, your best bet is to bet on yourself and make some changes, take some risk. I encourage you to think about where you want to go and dream about it, and then go out and pursue those dreams by finding a network of people that'll help you. You'd be surprised that people will help you if you just ask for the help. And I don't know if any of you have heard of something called epigenetics. Have you? No? A little bit. Okay. Epigenetics is just the study of like your own ancestors. Like social scientists have done some studies where you carry 13 generations of your trauma. So whatever your family lived through, you're carrying it. And that's why this cycle is hard to break. But I encourage you to like really find out, do some self-reflection and dream big. Because the 10 different startups that I joined represented me taking risk because I wanted like more variety. I wanted more opportunity for myself. And each time I took that change, I'm not always the best HR operator. You can probably find better folks out there, like Kamesh just John's chief people officer in the crowd. But I actually got the benefit of people who invested in me. And that was part of my success. It wasn't because I was the strongest operator. It was actually because people took chances on me. And that's what you need to do for yourself.
Just have a little personal perspective on this is, again, there's a lot of things going around us, geopolitics and the environment. We don't want to get too political here, but for us, my belief is as Asian Americans, we all have a North Star. And as long as we continue following that North Star, irrespective of what the environment is, I think it's our time will come. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be the day after, but administrations may change and come and go, etc. But as long as we're on our own agenda, that's what I believe for myself has worked for me. So it's something to think about. It's not be swayed by what's going on in the world. It's a lot of geopolitics, but hopefully we're all going to follow our own North Star, our own ambitions. And being Asian American, we're pretty proud of what we've accomplished, so we want to take that forward. Okay, we will open it up to the audience for some Q&A as well. We want to shift to the third important theme is we talked about the past, we talked about kind of the current times. In the future, right, if you had kind of a wish list, next 10 year, we're sitting here, many of us will be even younger 10 years later. So we're sitting here on this panel, what does that look like in terms of what do you aspire for the community, what do you aspire to see for yourselves, and that kind of stuff. So for looking out in the future. Maybe Mai, I'll start with you. Switch it up a little bit.
Sure. So as you make it to leadership positions, I actually think what's important is for you to take other people with you. I think that's something as a community that because we've been taught to sort of do it on our own, we don't pay enough attention to being the role model for others. And so I urge you to actually pull people with you. And that way you can give back to the community too. And in the end, Emma will have a great manager. So my training is actually around coaching, especially Asian American leaders, to serve as a role model for Emma, my daughter, for the future. Because she needs to see more of you in the rooms because she's used to seeing all the pictures of the rooms where I sit, where it's always certain men who are 6 feet tall. I'm barely 5 feet and I'm always the one with dark hair. And it's fascinating because through a child's eyes, they see me as different, whereas I just think it's the norm. But I want you to just think about that as you make it into your leadership positions. Take others with you because that's how we all thrive.
Kamesh?
Great point. I think 10 years from now, I hope it's not us three up here. I hope it's the 3 people here. Well, a little bit younger, as you said, but hopefully it's four of you that are here that are on this panel. That means we would have done something. What John's doing, paid forward, help people. People have always been there for me to help, and sometimes you forget. You have to hear it. It takes a village. Well, you can help create that village. You can help do that for others. And I think as we grow as a community, as we have a greater voice as a community, that voice needs to be together. It's only powerful if it's together. And, in that way, I think that's the power. If you ask me about an Asian community 20 years ago, it was more sectioned off to me. Now I see a full community. What will it be in 10 years? All of you and the people you know can shape that.
Right. John?
Yeah, I think I'm an optimist. And so even though today we may not be as represented from the data that you saw, 20 years ago was much worse, and 20 years before that, there was a Chinese Exclusion Act, right? For instance, that's 60 years ago, right? So we've just moved on from there as a country, and why do people still want to come to this country? it still gives you the most opportunity. And you can see that even in the Fortune 500, I count the number of Asian American CEOs. You can actually count that. But before you didn't have to count. There weren't nobody. There was no one. So I think it's progress. It's slow. It's probably not as fast as we'd like, but it is moving. And so I'm an optimist that 10 years from now it will be better. When I look at the next generation, they're just so much talented, much more talented than we are. I have kids. Not a single one is doing medicine or engineering. Yeah, so we broke the cycle right there. And they're going to do well. They're going to be in finance. They're going to be in law. So, some of the positions that you end up running companies from. I think I would also add that in times of turbulence, especially the next 10 years in your own careers, your reputation is something you spend decades building, and you can ruin it in one day. Right? Especially if you become a leader, and as you ascend leadership positions, let's say you're head of a public company, and there's a lot of politics that are changing and things are going on. I think you have to stay true to what you believe and what your integrity. Don't go with the winds, as you said, because they will always shift. You have to have the North Star. Your integrity is the only thing you can actually take with you. Right? And it's something that you build over decades and you can do it in one day. So we have to always keep that in mind and think. And if you do that, I think many of you will be in leadership positions and respected and looked up to by the next generation after you.
Great, thank you. I want to summarize what I heard key themes over the last 10, 15 minutes. I heard risk come up quite a bit. I'm a big believer in that as well. I heard resilience. Kamesh talked about that. I'm going to add in the third R, which is resurrection. Because as you said, you will fail. We will all fail at some point in our lives. But how do you get up, dust it off, learn from it, move on? So maybe 3 R's can be really useful North Star kind of compasses. So, okay, with that, so first of all, thank you to all the panelists. We appreciate it. We do want you to be back in 10 years, younger selves. So I just want to put it out there. Let's open it up some questions. Maybe we have time for a couple of questions, or John doing ahead of time so that you'll be glad to know this panel is being more efficient without the use of AI. So, all right, questions?
Hi, my name is Nara from JP Morgan. I just want to say thank you so much. This has been so insightful. I had a question for Mai specifically. What you said in regards to what you did to get your network in the next level, right? That really resonated with me, and I'm just curious, what did you feel that you saw in terms of like the most repeated qualities of the candidate that was chosen for the other?
I'm going to do a really quick crash course on something called PI that was taught to me long ago, but isn't taught very often, but it works in every organization. PI stands for P is performance, I is for image, and E is exposure. What I've learned is that most people focus on performance because that's what you think wins the prize. But I can tell you your image and exposure are actually more crucial as you raise up in the ranks of corporate America. The image part is like, what is your brand? As John talked about earlier, what brand and reputation do you have out there? They judge you based upon that. And exposure is, who knows about your work? Does the CEO know who you are? Because those two elements of PI are the most neglected ones, especially for minorities, women, and just generally the non-majority. So PI is what I leave you with because it is actually what helped me in my career, but it's what I see the major differences with everybody else that I've seen in these denied promotions.
Good, thank you, Mark. Any others? I know this is not a shy group, so maybe we'll get a question from that side of the audience. Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, I'm Shravya Durgu and I'm from Pfizer, and thank you to all the panelists. Again, as others mentioned, it's very insightful. Just wanted any of you to share one career-defining moment where you felt truly proud to be Asian American, or do you leverage some of your roots?
John, you want to start? I'll chime in.
Yeah, I would say when the board went into a room to decide if I would be the next CEO, and they decided obviously yes. The company had never had anybody but Italian Americans. In fact, I thought you had to be Italian American, or at least your last name had to end in a vowel. But, well, mine does, by the way, but it's just not preceded by a consonant. But we had that discussion. Some folks, who were my colleagues in the previous company, said, "You're joining a company. You have to be Italian to be the CEO." That was true. First 3 CEOs. But what I found is it's just coincidence. And what I found is the culture of that company. It was started by people who earned it, who came up. They weren't, privileged. They earned every bit of their talent. And so when they chose the next person, it was about merit. Also your image and your exposure too. But and that's when I said that's the American dream. Is that in one generation you can go from being born in a third world country to the CEO of an American corporation. That's the dream of America. And I think that was what drove our parents to come over here. And I still am proud of that. I'm still proud of America because it's the only country that gives you that opportunity.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Maybe Kamesh and Mai, with some perspectives on that.
I think my most proudest moment of being Asian American, it's probably being part of this organization. In organizations like this, it's the ability to get up and see, first to get honored for the community. I remember the first time I stood, when I got the award, you go on, you take a picture, you come off, and then I talk a lot, so John asked me to do the thank you for many years. And I would always get up and say the same thing, because everyone's ready to go. There's 600 people in that room, and they're all Asian American. Creating this, and the power you feel from that room, it's funny, I had twins that are 15 now. When they were younger, we would send them to Hindu Heritage Camp, and that's a place in Rochester, New York, where they wake up with 57 Indian boys and 57 Indian girls. It's the first time they woke up and just saw all brown, right? And it's such an empowerment to go, I have this too, this arrow in my quiver. And thanks to John, thanks to many organizations, and then when John started, this may have been the only organization. Now there's 7, 8, there's Asian organizations to specialties. So I'm so proud to be a part of spreading that and watching the growth here. And it ties into my profession, it ties into life, because again, I think it's what you think is your weakness, is your strength, your diversity. So thank you to John and thank you to these organizations, because I think that's my proudest moment is having helped.
For me, I don't know how many of you, raise your hands, if your name has ever been mispronounced. Like a lot, right? A lot of people in this room. And I think for the most rooms where I sat, they would give nicknames to people as a way to remember them outside their name. And I just felt, you know what? You need to be able to say Wang. Like, what? Why can't you say that? And it was like that realization that no, you don't give people nicknames, you learn their names. And I think that even in those moments, they're small moments that probably you don't get exposed to as much, but I can tell you that there's certain things I put my foot down, and I think knowing somebody's name is actually one of the most important things as a leader. So learn how to pronounce names of many different ethnicities and locations, and that will serve you well too. Remember, you're going to be a global leader for Emma, so please say the names correctly.
Maybe for me, I'll just add, for me, I'm a passionate Asian American bridge. I see myself as a bridge between Asia and the US, and like I said earlier, I've done now 3 tours of duty to Asia. Proud Asian American, went to Asia 3 times in my career and came back those 3 times. So it's been kind of fascinating taking what I learned in the US, bringing it there, what I learned there, bringing it back, so kind of cross-pollinating. So that seemed to be kind of a defining moment. So thank you for the question. Well, maybe I have one more question and then we'll start to wrap things up.
My name is Pete My name is Peter Young, and I run investment bank. I'm actually making this comment as a member of this.
Sorry, if you could just speak up, the mic is a little bit.
It's going green, apparently. There we
Now
go.
we can-
Okay, that's better. All right. So, but I'm asking this question as a member of Committee 100, and actually I'm head of their Asian American Career Ceilings program. And the reason I mention that is that one of our events, we had two leading researchers, one from Columbia University, one from MIT Sloan School, who had done 8 studies on how Asian Americans had done in business and where their differences and so forth. And they had 2 takeaways. One was what Kamesh said, which is there are a whole lot of organizations now, right? But the other was that actually there's huge differences in the performance, whether it's Indian Americans, South Asians, or East Asians, and so forth. In fact, the data says that Indian Americans actually do extremely well. And if you look at the number of CEOs of prominent companies, they're overrepresented, not overrepresented, but they've done extremely well. And actually they behave very differently in terms of how they organize themselves in terms of fundraising, leaders, getting people into government, and so forth. So the question is this: number one, is their conclusion correct that we have different groups and they're performing very, very differently, whether they're Korean American, Japanese American, Chinese American, Indian American? And what can we do to actually work better together and learn from each other? Because their conclusion was you've got these splintered silos, and some are doing really well, Indian American do well, and they said it's not because they look Caucasian, we know that. It's not because they don't speak English better than others. It's not. So there are a number of things that, but the other is that they're not working together. So any comments on, one, differences, but also how these groups could do a better job of working together?
I'll start. I think the anecdotal observation is correct. So now there's data that says it's correct. The reasons are probably complex. But I think an organization like AABDC, as I said, there were no South Asians before, now there are. This is one of the few groups, I think, that does that. And so, to your point, this particular group is more successful today for whatever reason that they can bring along the broader group. That would be one way to bridge that. I think there are theories about it, right? Which is that South Asian Americans are better at socializing and speaking because maybe culturally that's more part of their culture. East Asians, we were, as you probably grew up, don't speak until you're spoken to. The adults speak. You answer when you're asked, right? And then suddenly you leave, and it's like, what's your opinion? It's like, well, I don't know. I'm not allowed, am I? It's hard to break that. And so I think there is some biases in how some cultures were brought up. But over time, you and I don't have an accent. So at some point, we did grow up in the culture, in this culture. So at some point, I think we've got to own it. It's like, I don't have any disadvantages from a language problem. I don't have any disadvantages from understanding what's important to American culture. So at some point, you have to kind of own it as well, I think. And there's enough examples where people have been successful that I don't think you can say, well, it's just because I'm a South Asian or an East Asian that I can't get there. I think at some point you got to own it as well.
Thank you. Mai, maybe?
I think there are more role models in the world for South Asian leaders, and I think that we're making progress. But because we're not a monolith like Asian Americans, we're different, right? And some of our culture, some of our traditions, our food, it's all different. But when corporate America, and I say the Western world, looks at us, sometimes they get confused. Like, I am 100% Vietnamese, but most folks think I'm Chinese. And so even that small moment is something where they lump us all together. And I think your question is, what can we do? Is that I actually think there's solidarity in members. And we just need to form the community and organizations like AABDC, and this is the 10th anniversary, like things are changing, and yes, slowly, but we are making progress. But I think that progress has to come with us doing it together instead of being siloed and fractured like we normally have. So I think there's more to be done, and I hope that we can all join together, because I think the cohesion is what we need.
Great. We're going to start to wrap things up. So first of all, panelists, thank you for your participation, your inputs. I do want to echo, we want to keep going, so maybe we have one question, one more
I
question.
can finish that.
Oh,
We just said about.
we have some.
I'll go quick and take another question. When I said community, the Asian community is interesting because as we grew up, we were kind of insulated to our communities, to our cultures, to our heritages. I grew up South Indian from Chennai, were Tamil. The only people I knew were in the communities my parents hung out with were South Indian Tamil people. I thought everybody, being Indian was the same, because growing up, being Indian didn't have the same thing until post 1981 when the country kind of came together. Just like the Asian community, the Indian communities, the 27 languages, 114 dialects, we're all different. But now every firm has an Asian network, and we're going and learning about everyone else's culture. And I think that's really important to get out of your culture. And now the word community exists. It's fun to go and learn about other cultures. How do you make a friend? You make a friend by going out and saying, here's what I want to do, here's what I want to do. Tell me about yourself. And I think as a community, the more we do that, the more we break off from, I'm Vietnamese and that we're all coming together as a community. The word exists. There's an Asian community, so there's a lot of progress.
Okay, so go ahead.
Thank you all for such a riveting conversation. I'm Neeta from JP Morgan, and along with my day job, I'm also a location lead for TIFF, which is Women in IT. I happened to bring my 10-year-old to one of the events that we conducted in a room full of women. As a result of that, she thinks that Jamie Dimon is a woman. So my question to you guys is, there are many people that I'm mentoring, and there is a common theme that if I work, that will be recognized without me speaking up. So what is one advice that any one of you would give that I can pass on, how to break that cycle?
Maybe I'll start off, just a personal perspective. I'm big on mentoring, but I believe mentoring also has to go both ways. Right? I mean, I've got a bunch of mentees, but I'm using this as a learning opportunity for me. They're much more digitally savvy, technologically savvy than I am, so I'm using this as a learning opportunity. I do believe it needs to be two-way, it needs to work for both, kind of in the relationship, if you will. And second, I think when you really get into a mentoring relationship, this is my view is, be selective, as in don't sign up with 30 people and you don't give time, and then it just becomes like spread peanut butter, right? Be selective, pick 4 or 5 or whatever you can handle, and really invest the time, the cycles, look out for them, sponsor them at the right opportunities, because then that's really something that's skin in the game. Otherwise, it's just, you're just doing it, somebody's just doing it to check the box kind of thing. So I'm really big on mentoring and working with mentees, or vice versa, but you really have to invest the time, energy, etc. So maybe others? Mai?
I think there's something called invisible work. And it's work that you're doing, you're working hard, you're thinking that that is the formula for success. But actually, you actually need to humble brag. And you need to find a way to talk about your work and showcase your work while being modest. And I know that goes against the grain of some of the things that we're taught as Asian Americans, is to be modest and be humble. But in corporate America, where I've sat in the walls and in the rooms, they want you to showcase your work. What are you really doing to affect the business? What's your impact? Because you can work, and I saw it. I started my career in PwC, where there's a clear partnership track. And most of the Asians were doing most of the work, but never making it to the top. And it was because nobody knew what kind of work they were doing. And so I urge you to find a way to find your voice and brag about your work. You don't have to be arrogant, you don't have to be over the top, but you can actually find a way to talk about the work that you're doing and line it up with the business impact and sort of like what you're doing for the business, and be proud of that. And it's okay. Like if you do it respectfully, people appreciate that. Just don't go over the top and be arrogant about it, because that can have other effects.
Can we take one more?
I was going to say, we had all the kids do debate in high school because it was something that I never did, and I had to learn how to speak in public, be comfortable with it because I'm more introverted. Debate just teaches those skills that you can speak up. You know how to speak up. You know how to get clear thoughts. That was a big skill that we had to use to counter the natural inclination of culture. I think.
We'll take one more question.
Thank you, John. First of all, thank you for the invitation and for creating the AABR. My name is John Sun. Name. I'm not from Johnson Johnson. I'm from the artist. My question is the science. The Asian Americans are known good on science, but we talk about science mostly on the natural science and physics and math, and that's stereotyping, right? But I think a lot of social science we're not aware of. I think when we talk about, I think in my personal journey, many folks I mentor as well, is we've been in the community in the whole, as John mentioned as well, making progress, but over the years we're not there yet. The reason I think is we're not cracked the code of the social science of the Asian American. We see it, we're not really understand thoroughly. We do need more HR expert, you're a social scientist, to work on this. I'll share it with the group here. I look at the definition, very definition of science on AI generated the answer is a science is a systematic way of learning about the world through observation and experimentation. Are we seeing the world as we're supposed to see, or we want to see what we want to see? I think cultural background has played a huge role to that. My own journey, one time I'm asking why I'm not getting promoted. One of my managers said, "You work too hard." I thought he was joking. Many years later, I think he's right. I work too hard. I use my own darn stupid science to predict what's going to happen. Wrong prediction. I have a wrong observation to cultural background. It's not, I'm not a bad person, but that's a very nice person etiquette actually prevent me to advance to the higher level because I talk repeatedly. And John mentioned, as you said as well, the cultural things will hinder us to progress. Thank you.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I mean, thank you for sharing your personal story. I think many of us have such observations and reflections. We have our own, ceilings, whatever you want to call it, our mental kind of predispositions. So there's probably no silver bullet, at least in my opinion. I think we all have to work on it ourselves, recognize it. The thing is, you had your epiphany, and now you're working on a different maybe pathway that will hopefully take you to success.
Maybe an additional thought to it. You only have so much time in the day, and you can only do so much. I think we were taught to focus on the science or the hard work and be the best engineer, be the best doctor, and you would be rewarded. If that's the goal, then that's fine. If you want to be a good doctor or a good engineer. If the goal is to be a good manager of human beings in America, those are different skills. And so it's not about, I don't think your manager said you're working too hard. He's saying you're not working on the right things to be a manager of other human beings in America because you're not managing other Asians. You're managing Americans, right? And managing human beings. Human beings are squishy. They go that way, right? They just don't kind of follow the orders, right? It's not science. And so those are different skill sets. And I think one of the things we have to really understand is if you want to be a leader in an American corporation where most people are not Asian, then you have to figure out what are the skill sets you need to do that. If you grew up as an American, that's easier because it just happens, right? You just kind of know it. But remember, not all Americans, not all white men are good managers, and well, right? There's only a few. And you have great managers who are white men, you have great managers who are not. And so even though you grew up in that position, some of them did not really work on those skill sets. So I would offer that as another area. Work hard at what you want to do. What you want to do may require very different skill sets than what you thought you were working on.
And finally, I want you to break the cycle. My husband loves the classics, but because he came from an immigrant family, his functional major was finance, because that's what you do. You respect your elders by going into a very functional major, and that's what he ends up. He's now a finance person in the world today, but his love for the classics never disappeared, and it's only now that he's older that he can finally get back to the things he loves. He loves photography, he loves design, he loves architecture, but he couldn't do any of that as a career. So I, again, urge you to break the cycle. It's okay to study liberal arts and social sciences. They actually lead to different pathways, and the people actually end up a little bit more creative, because you have to figure out what you're going to do in the world when you come out with a sociology degree like I did. My parents were like, how do I explain what you majored in to our friends? Can I just tell them you're a pharmacy major? That's fine. But you end up making it. You won't let yourself fail. So take the bet on yourself and just dream big.
Okay, we're gonna definitely wrap up now. I'm sure if you guys at breaks and stuff, you can find any of the panelists. And thank you for patiently listening with us. And John, thank you again for your support. We appreciate it. Thank you.